Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Agriculture Committee. I'm Senator Steve Halloran. I'm from Hastings, Nebraska, and represent the 33rd Legislative District. I serve as the chair of this committee. The committee will take up the bills and the confirmations in the order posted on the agenda. Our hearing today is your public part of the legislative process. This is your opportunity to express your position on the proposed legislation before us today. Committee members might come and go during the hearing. This is just part of the process as we have bills to introduce in other committees. I ask that you abide by the following procedures to better facilitate today's proceedings. Please silence or turn off your cell phones. Please move to the reserved chairs when you are ready to testify. These are the first two chairs on either side of the front row. Introducers will make initial statements, followed by proponents, opponents, and neutral testimony. Closing remarks are reserved for the introducing senator only. If you are planning to testify, please pick up a green sign-in sheet that is on the table at the back of the room. Please fill out the green sign-in sheet before you testify. Please print, and it is important to complete the form in its entirety. When it is your turn to testify, give the sign-in sheet to a page or to the committee clerk. This will help make a more accurate public record. If you do not wish to testify today, but would like to record your name as being present at the hearing, there's a separate white sheet on the tables that you can sign for that purpose. This will be a part of the official record of the hearing. If you have handouts, please make sure that you have 12 copies and give them to the page when you come up to testify, and they will distribute those to the committee. If you do not have sufficient copies, Paige will make sufficient copies for you. When you come up to testify, please speak clearly into the microphone. That's very important for the sake of the transcribers and for everyone in the room as well. Please don't be bashful. Speak right into the microphone. Please tell us your name and please spell your name to ensure we get an accurate record. We will be using the light system for all testifiers. You will have 5 minutes to make your initial remarks to the committee. When you see the yellow light come on, that means you have 1 minute remaining, and the red light indicates your time has ended. Questions from the committee may follow. No display of support or opposition to a bill, vocal or otherwise, are allowed at public hearing. Committee members with us today will introduce themselves, starting on my far left. Senator Raybould.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Jane Raybould, Legislative District 28, which is in the center of Lincoln.
Shannon Hughes, Legislative District 24, Seward County, York County, Polk County, and a little bit of Butler.
Tom Brewer, District 43, 11 counties of western Nebraska.
Teresa Ibod, District 44, 8 counties in southwest Nebraska.
And Senator Ibach is the vice chair of this committee. On my far right,
Rick Holcroft, District 36, West and South Sarpy County.
Murph Rigby, District 12, which is southwest Omaha, part of it, and the small town of Rose.
okay, thank you. And to my right is committee research analyst Rick Leonard, and to my far left, committee clerk Andrew Ojeda. And the pages with us today are both political science majors from UNL. We have John Vanes and Ken Bartlett. And we will talk to them a little bit later about political science as a major. So we will begin today's hearing with LB 321. And this is a committee bill. We're bringing this bill at the request of the Department of Agriculture. So I will ask, excuse me, 321. I beg your pardon. This is not a committee bill. Starting with LB 321, Senator Brandt.
Trying to catch my breath. All right. Page.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman Halloran and members of the Agriculture Committee. I am Senator Tom Brandt, Tombrandt. I represent Legislative District 32, Fillmore, Thayer, Jefferson, Saline, and southwestern Lancaster counties. Today, I am introducing Legislative Bill 321, which would expand our cottage food opportunities in the state. Cottage foods, commonly known as home-based foods, are products that are made in a private home and sold directly to consumers. These products can include baked goods, jams, jellies, pickles, and more. The cottage food bill was passed in 2019. One of the benefits of cottage foods is that they provide a way for individuals to start their own business from home. This can be especially beneficial for stay-at-home parents, retirees, or anyone looking to supplement their income. Cottage foods allow customers to purchase foods that are made locally. Over 1,000 cottage food producers have registered with the Department of Ag since the program's creation in 2019. The changes this bill will make to the cottage food law will allow producers to sell non-refrigerated foods like cheesecakes and other time temperature controlled foods like non-meat casseroles. The idea for these changes came from the cottage foods producers themselves. Currently, our neighbors in Iowa, South Dakota, and Wyoming have already expanded their cottage food laws to sell the products that are proposed in this legislation. The White Copy Amendment comes from discussions with the Department of Ag that addresses the issues they had with the bill as it was originally written. The changes the amendment makes is exempting these cottage foods producers from being labeled as milk distributors and listing out foods that are non-exempt. I thank the department for coming up with this amendment that makes it a better bill. The fiscal note attached is at the recommendation of the Department of Ag that would add a full-time employee to facilitate administrative responses to public inquiries about cottage foods. With already over 1,000 registered cottage food producers, the Department of Ag anticipates they will receive an increase in public inquiries regarding these operations. In conclusion, cottage foods offer a unique opportunity for individuals to start their own business and provide customers with locally made, high-quality food products. Many individuals have found success in cottage food businesses. Some have been able to turn their cottage food business into a full-time job. Following me, you'll be able to hear from just a few of the cottage foods producers that have found success doing something they love to do. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you, Senator Brandt. Are there any questions from the committee at this point? Okay, see, yes.
Thank you.
Would you introduce yourself, Senator?
Senator Ben Hansen, District 16, Washingtonburg, coming in parts of Stanton County. I love this bill, mainly because I prioritized it back in 2019. The last page on the amendment, was that in the original part of the bill? Sorry, I don't have the original bill in front of me.
Oh,
About labeling,
about what?
about all the labeling requirements.
There were labeling requirements in the original bill. They had to put, I believe, their name and address on the food product. There will be some producers coming up that use this, and the Department of Ag, I think, is here to testify. They could probably answer that better than I can. I'll look over here and see what I can find
Awesome.
out.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, see none, thank you. Stick around for close.
Yes, we will.
All right. We will begin with proponents for LB 321. First proponent. Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman Halloran, members of the Ag Committee, Nicole Fox, NICOLE-FOX, Director of Government Relations at the Platt Institute. And I thank you for this opportunity to discuss the expansion of Nebraska's cottage foods law. LB 321 amends the Nebraska Pure Food Act so that our state's cottage food producers may sell products that are time and temperature controlled. This means that in addition to the shelf-stable baked goods and foods like jams and jellies that are already allowed, foods like cheesecakes, cream-filled pastries, non-meat items such as hummus and pesto sauces would be allowed. The Platt Institute supports policies that reduce barriers and help Nebraskans to start and grow businesses. In 2019, we supported LB 304, which passed and became Nebraska's current cottage foods law. As part of the bill's passage, a cottage foods registry was created. By the end of 2019, 67 individuals from 23 counties had registered with the Department of Agriculture as cottage food producers. Fast forward to the end of 2022, there are now over 1,000 individuals registered as cottage foods producers from from 83 of Nebraska's 93 counties. During the 2022 interim, cottage foods producers expressed to us their desire for an expanded cottage foods law, and I appreciate Senator Brandt's willingness to help make this happen. Cottage foods provides a means to earn an income and become an entrepreneur directly from one's own home kitchen. For some individuals in our state, the ability to generate income may be difficult. Rural areas may offer limited job opportunities, particularly for women. Family responsibilities may not allow for work outside of the home, and renting commercial kitchen space or having the collateral to qualify for a small business loan for a brick and mortar establishment may be out of reach. Prior to the pandemic, a 2019 Pew Research article reported that farmers markets had an increased popularity of the Eat Local movement, which led to a projected $20 billion in annual sales compared to $5 billion in 2008. And again, this is pre-pandemic, and I know cottage foods has exploded since the pandemic. Since the start of 2021, roughly a dozen states have either eased or eliminated restrictions on the sale of food products made in home kitchens. While their rules may vary, changes made reflect the uptick heightened by the COVID pandemic, where many Americans found comfort in their kitchens and a way to help earn an income. Nebraska has three neighboring states, as already mentioned, South Dakota, Iowa, and Wyoming, and each allows for the sale of the same foods that are proposed in LB 321. All 50 states allow the sale of cottage foods, with Wyoming having the most permissive law in the country. There have been no reports of foodborne illness due to the consumption of cottage foods products in Nebraska, Wyoming, or the other 48 states that allow them. It's time to follow the lead of other states and expand our cottage food law in Nebraska. The Platt Institute views LB 321 as a win for food entrepreneurs and for providing for greater income earning potential. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thanks for your testimony. Next proponent for LB 321. Please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Harper, CindyHarper, and I am a cottage food producer. I have been baking for many, many years, but I did begin my business when the original cottage food law was passed 3 years ago. My main outlet is the farmers market here in Lincoln. It was a little slow due to COVID a couple of years, but in the last couple of years, it's really expanded. People are back. They're buying a lot of things from the vendors at the market. My main product was always decorated sugar cookies. That's what I had wanted to market. But I've expanded now into more of a small bakery, making all sorts of different items. A lot of that is based on what the people who attend the farmers market have told me that they would like to have. One of the biggest things is kolaches. People of Lincoln seem to be a little kolache deprived. So those have been a great product for me. And in the last 4 years, I've seen my total sales really quadruple. So it's been a great thing for me. Now, I have a full-time job, so this is a side thing for me. Really, my intention is to develop a business where I can have something going into retirement to provide some extra income. I do get requests from customers quite often for things that under the current law I cannot make. And some things are not practical to take to the farmer's market anyway, especially when it's 90 degrees outside. But I can take orders, I can work delivery or pick up at a later date when it is safe to produce those items. For me as a cottage food producer, having the cottage law expanded to allow these items, things like creams and cream cheeses, pastry creams, things like that, it would be a huge benefit to me to expand my business, to be able to provide the items that my customers want, and to be more involved in basically their lives. When I have a customer who comes back to me for item after item, for event after event, you really become almost part of their lives, part of the events, part of the celebrations that the families are having. And And it's great just to see how things, that you have the baby shower and then you see the child grow and it's the birthday party and things like that. So you really become part of the family. And then there's the referrals that they can give out to the people who attend their parties and things. So it's a great opportunity to grow the business. I do want to say that one thing that's a little frustrating to me as a cottage food producer under the current law is that I could bake a cheesecake and take it into my work. And we could have it for our potluck lunch and everything's fine. But when a coworker asked me to bake a cheesecake for her for an event, I had to say no, because under the current law, that was not allowed. And the situations are very similar. I would be making the same cheesecake for both events, practicing the same safety, delivering it cold like it should be. So I don't see that, it really inhibits me, to be honest. It inhibits what I can do and it inhibits what's available to my customers. So I really do believe that the time has come. The success or the cottage food product has been successful. We've shown that we can do it safely. The time has come to expand the law to allow us to really provide full access to bakery items to our customers and to be able to meet what they ask for us to do. With that, I thank you for your time. And do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Harper. Who doesn't like sugar cookies and cola? Any questions, Senator Rabel?
Thank you, Ms. Harper, for coming down. I just have a question. So with the transportation requirements and I guess the merchandising of the product, how are you going to keep the product, say, of a cheesecake safe and refrigerated at a farmer's market?
Okay, well, I probably would not take it to the farmer's market. I would take an order perhaps at the farmer's market to deliver it at a later time. If it's one of our winter farmer's markets when it's 40 degrees outside and we're all freezing anyway, a cooler would work to do that. There is one person at the market who they have a trailer and they have a power source and they have a small refrigerator that they bring. And I don't know what they have in it, but I've seen that they have some things that look like cakes in it. And so that's a potential way of doing it, is having something that's portable, that could be hooked up to power and kept at the appropriate temperature. But for me, it would be more of I would make it at home and I would keep it in either my refrigerator or I have a stand-up freezer that's the size of a refrigerator that can also double as a refrigerator. So if I needed the extra space, I have it in there as well. And that's where I can also keep all of my ingredients and my supplies to make it.
So I have another question. So what about the labeling requirement? How do you customarily package your product and label it?
So I have a little Dymo printer that prints out little labels, and I put the title of what it is. So one cheesecake, or I might say like one chocolate chip cheesecake or something like that. So it's the quantity and the type of ingredient. And then I'm not required to list the ingredients, but I do list anything that's a potential allergen. I want to be clear on that. I can't tell people that there's not a possibility of cross-contamination because I don't have a space that's big enough to separate things out. Everything gets used for everything. And then I've got my allergen statement. In the case of a cheesecake, I can also then add on to that, keep refrigerated. And I can make it really big and bold just so that it's there. Like if you had bought something in the grocery store and it would say keep refrigerated on the label. And then at the bottom, there is the disclaimer that we all have to put on our products, which says that this is made in a home kitchen, not subject to inspection by a health department. And I also put on there that I do bake with nuts, just to be clear on that particular potential cross-contaminant.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would assume you probably put a date that is.
I don't. That's not required, but that is a good idea.
It probably should be required.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, especially for something that is perishable like a cheesecake. Yeah.
Sure. And who doesn't like cheesecake? Anybody? I'm just short. You don't like
No, I'm
Oh, Senator
a question.
Senator.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To a degree, this is a self-correcting issue though, because if you have a bad product and people don't buy it, you don't stay in business.
That's correct.
And what I'm seeing with these farmers markets is that it's not only a great place for folks to go to buy stuff cheap that comes straight from a garden or from an individual, but they're kind of big social events too. I mean, everybody's there to try a new coffee or whatever it is. So if we do something to help, make life easier for those that are trying to do that, it seems like a pretty good path ahead. And you guys make such a tiny impact on the bigger market. I guess I'll be interested to see the opposition to this because it seems logical, and I'm anxious to hear why we would not want to do this, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? I should take back, in my opening, I said there should be no displays at the hearing, but I'm disappointed we don't have some kolaches. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. You can be bribed.
Or we can always suspend the rules.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Agriculture Committee.
I'm Erin Odom, Erinodem. I am with ET Sweets here in Lincoln, a home bakery. I run my bakery full time. It has allowed flexibility with me to be home with my two littles. My daughter is actually in the crowd with me today, and our son's actually, since my business has grown so much with this bill in the last 3 years, I have been able to afford to take my son to daycare part-time right now. Any parent knows daycare is expensive. And so for the first 2.5 years of my kids' lives, they were home with me full time. And I was able to bring in an income because a lot of stay-at-home moms, it's hard to find an income for us to be able to make a difference. And that's what this college food bill has actually done for my family. It's allowed flexibility. And our daughter is starting preschool. And so hours of preschool don't always line up with a normal 8 to 5, 8 to 4 job. And so her preschool doesn't start until 9:30. So with my business at home, I'm able to take her to preschool, be able to pick her up and not have to find additional childcare for her and spend extra money that right now with everything being so expensive and inflation, we aren't able to do. My dad also has celiac disease. So this bill has helped me expand to a market of customers to show them that gluten-free items is very hard to come by. My dad's had celiac disease for 16 years. Back 16 years ago, there was not a lot of gluten-free items out there. Now there is. So my dad is also lactose intolerant. I'm able to help customers accommodate with nut allergies, being vegan, gluten-free, lactose intolerant. And so being a cottage food producer, I'm able to communicate with that. It's hard to go into a business. My dad, for an example, has gotten sick more times out at a restaurant. He's never gotten sick from me making him something. He's gotten sick quite a few times going out and getting something that was supposed to be gluten-free or dairy-free. And so I'm able to accommodate that and guarantee to my customers that the items are to their dietary restrictions. I have actually had a couple customers from Western Nebraska. I've delivered out to Lexington and Gothenburg because as people have noticed, there is not a lot of the cottage food producers even out in the western side of Nebraska. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for your testimony. Any questions from the committee?
Maybe a point of correction.
Yes.
Lexington, Gothenburg to a lot of us is Eastern Nebraska, just so.
Sorry.
Thank you, Senator Brewer, for that correction. Thanks for your testimony. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator.
okay.
Lewis.
So this one adds on the like cream cheese items and stuff. Would you expand your selection to include
Yes,
some of
yes.
this?
So that would allow, because if you look in the grocery store, I would advise you to go back and look, and especially it'll be in like the health department and looking at what is offered as like for gluten-free items. All of it's going to be frozen. So I would be able to provide fresh items to them that are not prepackaged and frozen for, you don't even know how many months at a time. Granted, I've never taken a frozen cheesecake and one of my cheesecakes together. Maybe that's something I should experiment with and see how like the difference, but I can only imagine that it's going to dry it out. Anything that's frozen at a long period of time dries out. And so it only allows us to give them a fresher item. Along with like cheesecakes, I have customers that are gluten-free and have to be nut-free. And so I could provide a solution for that. And
not very many options are out there to provide all those accommodations for the dietary restrictions out there.
Thanks for coming down.
Yes, Senator Rabel.
So you mentioned going out to Lexington and Gothenburg.
Mhm.
So I know that there's a 2-hour transport
Correct.
limitation. So tell us how you plan on transporting items that need to be refrigerated.
So I would have a cooler with dry ice, which would keep it at a adequate temperature, but I would also have a thermometer within a cooler to guarantee that the items were kept at that temperature, at the safe temperature for them. If once I got it to its end spot, if it was not kept at that correct temperature, I would not give it to the customer. So before it's handed off to the customer, I would make sure that it was kept for the whole time at that temperature.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Senator Rabel. Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any additional proponents for LB 321? Seeing Senator Hanson. Senator Hanson, good grief. John Hanson, welcome to the Ag Committee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. For the record, my name is John Hanson, John Hanson, Hansen, and I'm the president of Nebraska Farmers Union. I would say that on this issue, it harkens back to a lot of the discussions that we've had over the years. Reminds me of the discussions that we had relative to the farmers markets. We had fierce opposition for a very long time, saying that they would never work. And we still have folks who think they don't, and yet they're wildly successful. And so the argument that we made on the farmers market issue was that if they're not going to work, then you have nothing to worry about. So let's give it a try. And so that kind of strange logic worked. We gave them a try. They did work. So we've expanded on them. They've been a tremendous thing for a lot of communities, but also just a lot of small business folks, a lot of folks that are trying to market their agricultural products. So we saw cottage foods as an issue that was very similar to a lot of the benefits of the farmers market by being able to take folks that were already bringing products, expanding the things that they could do, and being able to expand the marketing year in all of those things. So we are an historic supporter of the establishment of cottage foods and help with all of the unsuccessful early attempts. Each one, of course, getting us closer to the acceptance of cottage foods. And so we're now here with cottage foods saying that based on what other states are doing, that this would be a reasonable expansion. And so we support the opportunity for small business folks to use their considerable cooking skills and baking skills and all of those things to bring in additional income. So this is, in our view, a nod and an encouragement to entrepreneurship and small business. And so we support it. Thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
All right, are there additional proponents for LB 321? Going once, going twice. Is there anyone here in opposition to LB 321? Good morning. Welcome to the Ag.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Halloran and members of the Agriculture Committee. My name is Laura McDougall, Laura McDougall, and I am the Health Director at the Four Corners Health Department. I'm here today to testify in opposition to LB 321 on behalf of Friends of Public Health in Nebraska. I do want to acknowledge our positive relationship with Senator Brandt and thank him for his support of our health departments and also vow to work with him on this bill to try and find a workable solution. Cases of food poisonings and foodborne illness are routinely reported to local public health departments. Bacteria like Salmonella, Staphylococcus, or E. coli can actually multiply in foods when the foods are not cooked thoroughly, cooled quickly, refrigerated properly, and if they contain enough moisture. These foods are called time temperature controlled for safety TCS foods. These foods must be specially handled and protected from contamination because they can cause serious illness and outbreaks of disease. In LB 321, individuals would be allowed to prepare these TCS foods in their home kitchens for sale to the general public without the benefit of inspection. Without proper cooking, cooling, and cold or hot holding temperatures, these foods can support the rapid growth of harmful bacteria. Just think about using a home kitchen to prepare a large batch of TCS food that must be cooked well, then cooled rapidly and kept cool while at a farmer's market or fair while you make a sale. I'm sure you can imagine several scenarios where something could go wrong. It takes clean and sanitary kitchens, adequate refrigerators, freezers, temperature monitoring equipment, and food safety knowledge to properly prepare and hold TCS foods. Inspection during food preparation is an essential component to protecting the safety of TCS foods. In my career at Four Corners, I've dealt with multiple foodborne outbreaks. Foods implicated in outbreaks were homemade fruit salsa, homemade cheesecake. Yes, we did have a cheesecake. And salads, which would all be allowed for sale under LB 321. I, myself, along with a handful of friends, have personally fallen victim to a homemade potato salad that was not properly chilled. We have stories of contaminated food being served at wedding receptions and wedding guests who have been hospitalized while the bride and groom fell ill on their honeymoon. Foodborne illnesses are certainly unpleasant, but sometimes they can be severe, like in the cases involving Salmonella or enterohemorrhagic E. coli. Certain strains of E. coli can result in hemolytic uremic syndrome, which is HUS, which can damage red blood cells and lead to kidney failure. Children are especially susceptible to E. coli. If food is not prepared or held at appropriate temperatures and is for sale to consumers, public health could be compromised, putting Nebraskans at risk for severe foodborne illness. We are aware that amendments are being worked on for LB 321, and we would like to be included as a stakeholder and work on any future amendments that are drafted. Thank you for your time today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Senator Hughes.
Thanks for coming. So with the amended that he brought in, what, in addition to that, what other changes do you think need to be made to make it that it would be safe for?
Right, so you heard some previous testimony where they had very good plans for keeping things cool and the equipment that's needed. You know, some of the equipment that's needed to really prepare food safely and hold it safely are things like pH meters and equipment that needs to be calibrated. The inspections are really crucial in making sure that a home kitchen is sanitary and clean. Also, you know, looking at appropriate training for the food, those who are preparing the food at home is really important. So those would be some things that we would really have in mind. But the main thing is that we're really concerned just about safety. We want these products to be safe. We want to support entrepreneurs in doing that.
Yes, Senator Rabel.
Thank you for coming to testify. Can you tell us a little bit about the certification process and licensing that the cottage industry has to go through, and how often are the inspections of the kitchens where production is taking place?
I would have to defer to someone else on that. Our health department does not do any food inspections. It's the Department of Agriculture in our area, but I can try to find out and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, understand we don't live in a perfect world. So what you're talking about here, I mean, my comments earlier about it's a self-correcting issue. If you're willing to sacrifice your name, your business, your reputation, all that, to make a product that's going to make people sick, it's going to self-correct pretty fast. Now, I understand the idea is that no one ever gets sick because everything is perfect and you're never going to go and even restaurants. And I'm not a great example because I got a garbage gut. I can eat anything. But there's a lot of folks that you see that have challenges with the restaurants. My concern is that we're going to try and find this perfect world and it be a farmer's market. You know, there are things naturally about a farmer's market that I don't know how you can inspect it and not have a battalion of inspectors out there touching everything that everyone is going to have at that market. And there's a point that there's so much government involvement in this and so much cost that you can't have a product to sell to the people. So I understand what you're saying with this, but where do we draw the line? How do we have a product and yet have the government inspect it all?
Again, I would just emphasize that safety is really key, and what we're concerned about are those who perhaps there are always good and bad examples of what can happen. And what tends to run across our radar are those examples where food safety has not been observed. And when we have children who are in the hospital with kidney failure, it becomes a really, you see the impact on families. And that's where when we have hospitalized people. And I think that is where, where we want to try to catch those things if possible.
Okay. How do we do that without hiring this battalion of inspectors?
I would have to, I do not have the answer to that.
All right, thank you.
Senator Iba.
This might be, thank you for testifying, by the way. This might be a question for the department. But are there any rules or laws out there, I shouldn't say laws, rules that define a disclaimer for cottage foods? So if I'm going to the farmer's market, does the farmer's market supply a disclaimer, or do any of the individual vendors provide a disclaimer?
I would have to defer again to the rules of the department on that.
Okay,
I'd have to get back to you.
thank you.
Senator Raby.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. My question is to availability of inspectors, so that, and also then the frequency of those inspections. I mean, if they're once a year, there's a lot of occurrences that can happen. I mean, so and you can have an inspection one day and a problem the next. So the inspections are somewhat faulty as well.
One of the things that inspectors are very good at is education. And when they're able to inspect a restaurant or a preparation area, they can also work with the preparers to educate them, point out troubles or problems that might be within the environment. And so that's also a very important part of this process, is just education. In our area, the Department of Agriculture does all of the inspections for restaurants and institutional hospitals, nursing homes, schools.
So what if this was in a rural, remote 5 miles out of town?
Yeah, there would need to be additional inspector capacity.
Okay.
Senator Hansen, are you finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you, sir.
Senator Hansen,
Thank you, Chairman.
the real Senator Hansen.
Yes, thanks. I appreciate you coming here. I understand you're doing your job too. These sound exactly like the same arguments I heard 3 years ago, especially the wedding reception cheesecake or something like that. Somebody, we're worried about wedding receptions and everyone getting E. coli. The biggest thing I remember hearing 3 years ago was, and it might have been from public health again, their biggest concern was somebody having a whole bunch of raw meat on the counter and then not cleaning it and then serving, making cookies right over the raw meat. I mean, some of the most, I think kind of insane ideas about how people actually cook foods at home. And so, to my knowledge, I don't think we've seen any issues so far since 2019. At least I don't think we've heard any reports of the people who've incorporated the cottage food bill and grown their business. You think we'd see at least some kind of increase in the amount of, concern or public health concerns since then. So far, I haven't seen it. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, in your opinion, maybe as a public health professional, the people who are doing this businesses out of their home, do you think they don't know what they're doing?
Well, so to begin to answer this in a couple different ways. First of all, the existing cottage food law is with foods that have a much lower chance of being able to support the growth of pathogenic bacteria. With water activity, the amount of water in food is really key in how bacteria can grow in foods. And so right now, the foods that are supported in the cottage food bill, they're prepared in a way that really does not support the growth of bacteria. So you can take them to a farmer's market. They can be in a warm place, and they're not going to support the growth of bacteria. When you start talking about these temperature sensitive foods that need to stay cooled, bacteria they multiply exponentially, and it doesn't take very long for you to have a real serious problem. And we have actually had a group of people get sick from a cheesecake in my district, and we're very, very sick. So I do believe people want to do the right thing, and we also want to support our entrepreneurs. The key is to find ways, though, to make that it just happen in a safer manner.
Okay. I'll ask my question differently because I don't think you quite answered it. Do you feel that people who are having these businesses out at home, do you think they're competent enough to cook these types of foods out of their homes in a responsible manner? Do you personally feel like they would be responsible and be able to follow temperature controls, pH balances, even some of the stuff that we heard before, testimony very similar to yours, we've incorporated into the bill last time, which had to do with making sure that if you use certain kinds of water, it was regulated for bacteria and nitrates. And one of the concerns you had was their ability to educational purposes. In the bill, there's something very specific about prior to conducting any food sales, they have to successfully complete a nationally accredited food safety and handling education course that covers topics such as the ones you brought up. So technically they are regulated to make sure that they do take some of these educational courses to make sure that they're doing the right things. So I think some of the concerns that you had before seems like we've adopted in the bill previously, which were valid concerns. I'm not saying they're not. And so we're moving into a different realm now, and I see some of the other kind of valid concerns. And so I have faith that they're going to follow through and they have the educational knowledge and the intent to make sure that, obviously, like Senator Brewer said, if they don't do good, they're going to go out of business pretty darn quick, right? And I don't know, I haven't heard of too many instances. You mentioned one example of a cheesecake causing illness. I haven't heard of too many of them over the course of I don't know how many years. So do you think, in your opinion, they would use the knowledge and the skills and the responsibility to follow through with making sure that the food is safe?
I do believe that people are competent, in that we can, especially with appropriate training, and also, that inspection is part of a training. It's an educational, people don't always know, maybe wouldn't recognize of a hazard in their own home. And it can be pointed out by an inspector as well. But, I do acknowledge that people are, with training, it would be a much safer environment to provide food and prepare food.
More than the nationally accredited food safety and handling courses they already have to take?
So there would be additional training, is my understanding, that an additional training would have to be prepared to make sure that they're being trained on those time-sensitive foods. It would be similar to what, restaurants would have to follow. It would be additional training more than what is presently required for cottage foods,
Okay,
as they are right now.
I appreciate you answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Hanson, Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, let's go back to, we'll take your cheesecake as an example. What's to say that I buy this cheesecake that has been well-made, well-prepped and everything else, and I leave it sitting out too long and then I eat it? I'm going to end up in the hospital. I'm going to say it was a cheesecake. I mean, how do we not know that these issues are generated by the individual buying the product rather than the individual who made it or the company that made it?
That can certainly happen. And that, our goal is to get it to the consumer in a safe manner. And what happens after that is really it's out of our control. But we do want that cheesecake to get to the consumer in a safe manner. And we would also really want that cheesecake to not already contain bacteria that would grow and make them sick. That it would be, we wouldn't want it to even have a low level of in it as it arrives to the consumer. If it's prepared properly, it shouldn't have those things.
Okay. The thing that we keep cycling back though is in order to give that guarantee for this perfect world, how on earth would we ever have enough inspectors, instructors, however you want to put that could do that and not crush the ability to have farmers markets and these small town entrepreneurial opportunities?
This is it definitely would be a lift to, if these kinds of foods were made available at farmers markets, if we would inspect all the
thank you.
homes.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Any further questions? I have a couple questions and I need to give a caveat. And I would, our goal here is not to grill you, so I hope you don't go away thinking you're well done grilled. But
It's all right. I've been grilled before.
No, but I think they've been
She
good.
got through COVID.
Yeah.
They've been good questions. You're educating us and that's what we need to have. So, but I need to give a caveat. I'm in the restaurant business. I have investment restaurants and I'm not going to name the restaurant, but part of my secondary role is I do corporate visits, right? That corporate visits mostly is dealing with, time and temperature issues, food safety. And I get to look at the department's health inspection review, and I do my own, right? And so kind of familiar with this whole process of time and temperature sensitive foods. And this is not a trick question, but maybe it is. Can you tell me how long it takes before food poisoning kicks in typically after eating something that's?
So after you ingest it, it depends on the type of bacteria that is in the food. There are some foods, if Staphylococcus is the agent, it actually produces toxin in the food and you can become ill an hour later from the toxin in the food with violent vomiting and gastrointestinal illness. On the other hand, if you're talking about salmonella, you could ingest something 12 hours later, become sick. Or even a day or two later, you can still become sick. So there's always an incubation period following ingesting food. And it also depends on how many bacteria, what the level is in the food.
Right. And I think that's important to note because I know we have, hate to admit this, but we'll have people that'll dine in our restaurant and then a half an hour later call us and say they are dying from food poisoning because they ate at our restaurant. Where to, Senator Brewer's point, it could have been that tuna fish sandwich that they ate 2.5 days ago that's finally kicking in.
Absolutely.
So it is really hard to connect those dots of cause and effect between what was eaten and what caused the symptoms that someone's experiencing. So it's a tough issue, and a lot of it is, I mean, one of the oldest axioms in law is caveat emptor, right? Let the buyer beware. Part of it is educating the public in general about, I mean, for example, when I go to picnics, I don't eat homemade potato salad. Just don't do it. I don't care who made it.
Personal bad experience, yeah.
Well, but and part of that is, and you see it also, I guess, and I'm probably pontificating here, but you also see it in the meat industry, hamburger specifically, or meat in general, where people will say, well, hamburger, you can cook it medium rare, you can have it rare. I'm sorry, no, those pathogens are blended into the meat potentially. As opposed to a steak, you can cook it to temperature on both sides, and those pathogens are going to die. It's safe. So, I mean, part of it is education of the public, and I'm not burdening you with that job, but the public has to be aware of what they're doing when it comes to cooking and eating. That was pontificating. I apologize for that, but I hate to put all the burden and blame on a cheesecake that's eaten at a wedding reception. On necessarily who made it, but maybe on who handled it later and mishandled it time and temperature wise. But anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But do you have any further comments on it?
I don't really, we do know that that food poisonings are underreported. And a lot of times it is because there is, people, it maybe isn't as severe as, the illness is unpleasant, but it's not putting you in the hospital. So, and when your neighbors are cooking food or your friends and, there's also a hesitancy to get your neighbor in trouble or your friend in trouble. So, we're just really, again, I go back to our main objective here is we just want the food to be safe for people. So thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
that.
for your time.
All right. If no further questions, thanks for your testimony. Is there additional opposition to LB 321? Again, it's helpful if you're going to testify to move up to the front row so that we are aware that you're going to testify. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Haller and members of the committee. My name is Zoe, Z-O-E Olson, O-L-S-O-N, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska Hospitality Association. We used to be known as the Nebraska Restaurant Association until January of last year, when the hoteliers and lodging joined with us. I'm testifying in opposition to the bill. I appreciate Senator Brandt's work on the bill. Our main opposition is the lack of regulation and inspection. Restaurants are regulated, they are inspected, and we believe food safety is the number one thing we do. And we would like to see that continued in this bill. And if we can work on that with Senator Brandt, then that would be where we would come down on it. Senator Hansen, I know you talked about, you can get stuff anywhere, you can get sick anywhere. During COVID, I made a lot of my friends angry because I said, I have friends that I will not go eat at their houses because I just won't eat food at their house. And they said, well, how do we know we're that person? And I'm like, invite me. I may not come, but I know what we do in the industry, and the inspections part of it, I think will be addressed in the next bill. But you're right, we need more inspectors, Senator Brewer, we absolutely do. But it's not a matter of going to a restaurant and inspecting every item that goes out. There's a general list of things that they follow. Same with grocery stores. There are dates of expiration when you use something and you put it back. Or if you were buying a cheesecake at a grocery store, there would be a use by date or a sell by date on that. And that's how you know that that's at least reasonably safe. So we would like the playing field leveled a little bit. We're in our business, everybody's been an entrepreneur. Everybody started their own business in one way or another. And we don't think it's fair to regulate one part of the food industry and not another. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Brewer?
All right, just for clarification, I'm not a fan of inspectors. Okay, I understand they got a role. But I come from a different perspective on everything, because keep in mind, I'll give an example. This summer in the Ukraine, we killed a wild hog, ground it up in a bunker, added raw egg and onion, and ate it raw. So I come from a
Good
whole
for
different
you.
place when it comes to standards of eating. But with that said, my concern is that we make it so difficult that no one wants to start a small business. So thread the needle so that we're able to give opportunity to folks, because a lot of times it really is someone working out of their kitchen and being able to take it down to that local market and have that product available, and all of a sudden it's a hit and people love it, and then they start expanding and you know, somebody loses their garage because that comes to the new place where they expand and work on it. So I understand there has to be some inspection at some point. My issue is I want it at the smallest level possible so that we don't, for one, have bigger government because we have all this inspection, and two, that we make it so that nobody wants to start a business because it's just so difficult that it's not realistic.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I will tell you that our number one concern in our industry is food safety. We believe that food safety is national security, in honesty. If your food supply goes, and not everybody can eat the wild boar with the eggs mixed up in it and eat it raw.
It's too bad, but okay.
That'd be me. I mean, I like my steak raw, but
It's called pork tartare.
yeah, but you know. We'll just, you know.
I'm with you. All
Yeah,
right.
but food safety is our number one thing, and I think people might be surprised for all the committees on food safety that I sit on, that I'd be the one proposing the stricter inspection, because we just don't want people to get ill. If it's.
Yes, Senator Hughes.
And I don't know that this is a question for you to answer, but when I listen to this, I think a restaurant gets inspected and they come there, is it twice a year, whatever the rules are?
It can
I know it can be a
depend.
surprise and
Mhm.
all that.
They are a surprise.
They should be a surprise,
They
right?
are a surprise, yes.
But it's also probably, I would imagine it's that way because a restaurant potentially is serving thousands of people over, because they're every day potentially.
Absolutely.
Where we're talking, the gal that came and spoke, she works full time. She goes to the farmer's market once a week for a couple months, or maybe I do stuff out of my home and I have, 20 customers every so often. It's also a little bit of mass, right? You got to protect the masses, like the grocery store, people are coming in all the time. So I don't know. And again, I don't know what's the question. Is there a line of when you've got so much business, that's when you start getting inspected, or?
Food trucks are inspected.
Food trucks are
Food
inspected.
trucks are inspected and should be. And
Right.
yeah, so food trucks don't do thousands and thousands of people a day. They're inspected.
Yeah.
It really is a matter of food safety. I hope I can do this without being too gross. Probably not.
Yeah, bring it on.
So I know of a health department in the state that got a complaint about food poisoning at a wedding. A lot of people came away with E. coli, and they did their whole breakdown of everything. The E. coli was determined that it came from a little boy who had diarrhea, and his mother decided to wash his clothes in the sink in the bathroom and cleaned everything up there. It wasn't the food that made the people sick. It was that. So when there is a big outbreak, your health department will come in and figure that out. What happened? How did it happen? They can trace it back. I have a lot of faith in our health departments, and I do have a dear friend who is in the cottage food business, and I will buy from her, but she has a separate kitchen that she made, and I've seen her, and she does follow everything. Do I believe everybody's competent? No. Do I believe everybody in the restaurant industry is competent? No. But we work really hard to make sure that those who are not competent aren't in business. So I guess that's where I would end.
Okay, any further questions? Senator Hansen?
Thank you. I think what Senator Holler was saying before about sometimes you don't know for sure exactly where stuff comes from is spot on, right? I think.
Absolutely.
So I know one of the best tools you use in public health, like you do with COVID, is contact tracing, right? You kind of find out where
Exactly.
things come from. That's typically the best kind of way to find out where kind of things come from. So sometimes over-regulating the people who are doing it isn't necessarily the answer. It's more kind of finding out where it comes from. So long as there's proper labeling, so you know where it comes from. And I think on the bill, they've addressed that as well with the labeling about who's making the food, where it's coming from. So in case there is ever a foodborne illness, you can contact trace where things kind of come back to, instead of over-regulating on the front end, right? Because sometimes you don't know where a lot of things come from. Another thing is, I agree with you when it comes to standards, right? I just think it should be the other way around. I think actually restaurants should be less regulated, as opposed to the other end being more regulated. Because restaurants, even with the over-regulation, in my opinion, but the adequate types of regulation and inspection, people still get sick in restaurants, right?
Tell me when.
Tell you when?
Yeah, give me an example.
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I've heard
Okay.
multiple instances of, over the course of time where people have gotten sick at restaurants, right? From foodborne illnesses such as E. coli or, right? Or nobody ever gets sick in a restaurant.
I'm not saying nobody ever gets sick, but
That'd be
when you're
great.
asking for specific instances from others, give me a specific instance. I guess I would say.
We don't question the senators, but
Okay.
That's fine, I
good.
don't mind,
That's
but
fine.
either way, I mean, it's the overarching kind of point I'm trying to make, is that even though we have a lot of regulation in restaurants, people still get sick.
Right.
And so I think with the bill and the amendment especially, that they've addressed, I think, a lot of the concerns that people up here so far are coming up with. They have proper education, they are making sure that their water is adequate. Is this more the idea of, are they going to be responsible? And I could ask in the same way, I don't think, and you were right too. Restaurants sometimes aren't responsible. And
Absolutely.
people making cottage foods are not responsible sometimes.
Absolutely.
But then how do you regulate that, right? I mean, do you put too much burdens on the people to try to think that you're regulating it? Or do you just have to trust the individual and see what happens with contact tracing? If something happens, then, okay, we got a problem here, we should pump the brakes. So far, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think the bill adequately addresses a lot of the concerns so far that I've heard.
The other concern we have in this is with the explosion of social media, when you start having people talking about, well, I got sick, in the food industry, it becomes cumulative and there's a blaming. And if people start feeling they're not safe when they go wherever they get their food, that becomes a cumulative effect for our industry as a whole. And that's a concern for us.
Sure.
So and the other part that the public health person said, that when you get that annual inspection every 6 months, whatever, there is that educational factor. There is that chance to say, is there a problem? Let's address it now, rather than, oh, well, we had a bunch of people got sick and they got really sick. Guess we better do something. I would rather see, I know that there are a lot of states around us that are doing their own thing and we want to follow them. I'd rather see Nebraska be a leader and say, we have an inspection of our cottage food industry rather than following the crowd. I'd like to see Nebraska be that leader.
Sure. Makes sense. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Senator Hansen. Any further questions? Seeing none, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Welcome to the Agriculture Committee.
Good morning.
You know
Thank
the
you.
drill.
Yeah, I do know the drill. Seen some of you not that long ago. Thank you, Chairman Halloran and members of the committee. My name is Ansley Fellers, ANSLEY, and I'm here on behalf of the Nebraska Grocery Industry Association testifying in opposition to LB 321. Quick note for everyone, it's my understanding that farmers markets are inspected. I would like the record to reflect. While we think cottage food issues are very tricky, we thank Senator Brandt for bringing this bill and working with the Department of Ag to improve some of the language. Obviously, the businesses and individuals I represent here today have no interest in standing in the way of folks trying to grow their business. We do believe, though, that any sort of regulatory reduction should first consider food safety and at some level business parity. Our members aren't just large grocers. Small meat processors, other food sellers have in fact gone through the regulatory process we're talking about today. It's my understanding the grocery industry came around a couple of years ago when the cottage food law was implemented, Senator Hansen's cottage food law. To be clear, that bill that passed and the existing law regulates what is traditionally defined as cottage food. And I didn't bring a handout here, but I'll send an email to the committee, and I welcome you to just Google it very quickly. Most states do what Nebraska currently does, allowing things like bakery products, jams, jellies, coffee, and other dry goods, candy, fruit butter, whatever, some things like that, to be sold as cottage foods. The products we're talking about here, which are like dairy and leafy greens, are often the cause of foodborne illness. They're often pinpointed. I think it's important to remember you might not have heard about people getting sick from these products because they're very highly regulated. Foodborne illness might be to some extent self-correcting, but the industry impacted suffers in the meantime. Even if there isn't an actual outbreak, even a rumor that someone's at risk from a certain type of product will send consumers running. The beef industry knows this. Sometimes we take the food safety we enjoy for granted. Additionally, because communities vary in population as well as the number and size of food service establishments, the federal and state governments have found it necessary to set basic standards for food safety, but reserve the rights of local governments to adopt stricter standards. The Nebraska Food Code, adapted from the FDA Food Code, provides the foundation from which local communities develop and enforce regulations to ensure a high standard of food safety and minimize opportunities for outbreaks. When outbreaks do occur, the system also allows regulatory agencies to localize the effects through early detection and location of the source. So we don't like the idea of preempting local governments doing some of the things necessary for the size of their communities. We echo other sentiments and welcome continued discussions with Senator Brandt and the proponents of this bill. As it stands, we ask the committee to hold it until public health stakeholders are on board. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Senator Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ansley.
This isn't where I
What
want
to
to
do with you? All right. So what you're saying is local control in this case probably isn't going to be the solution.
I think preempting local control is a bad idea, and that's what this bill does.
Okay, I'm glad you defined that. Now, if you remember back in your younger days, when you worked for a different firm, we had a meat locker bill that came before the legislature. It was from a number of meat locker operators, and their problem was that inspections were not available to them, or inspectors to inspect. And as a result of that, they could only kill once every 2 weeks. Well, because of that, they were essentially going out of business because they could not cycle enough carcasses through to process to have a viable business. And we looked at options in order to have more inspectors, and it came with a pretty hefty price tag. And we tried to look at other options. One of those was to say have veterinarians function as an inspector. We weren't able to fix that. Sorry. And so essentially the bill died and never went anywhere. I still think there's a need. So how do you get enough inspectors to do what you need to have done and still meet the requirements? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, so I know this will come up on the next bill, and we're in a very neutral capacity on that for a number of reasons, and I'll explain that on the next bill, and maybe a little bit different than restaurants in the health department, because I do think that getting more inspectors, making them available is a really important issue. I know maybe the department will mention this, that at one point in central Nebraska, there was a food inspector position open for like 36 months or more than 2 years, I think. It's really, I think that we don't necessarily in those instances want to make the requirements too lax. We obviously want people that are responsible, that take the job seriously, but I think there are ways that we could make finding and hiring the people that could do these jobs really well easier. And I think to your point, veterinarians, people that are familiar with carcasses, I think, at the time the meat, we don't need to talk about meat inspection, but your question about inspectors is really relevant to this discussion, and I think there's more work to be done.
Thank you. That was a well thought through answer.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope so.
Thanks, Senator Brewer. Further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there additional opposition to LB 321? Final call, opposition to LB 321? Seeing none, is there anyone in the neutral on LB 321? Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Halloran, members of the Agricultural Committee. My name is Bill Hawkins, Billhawkins. Originally, I wasn't going to testify on this bill, but in hearing both sides, I felt a need to give you my experience with food safety and farmers markets. I've been a farmers marketer my whole life, an entrepreneur. I've done food safety classes. I live outside, so I can greatly relate with Senator Brewer on being able to eat anything laying around. But my instances of food poisoning have been from restaurants. 12-hour incubation, and I'm sick. Because I'm single, I go to restaurants a lot, fast food deals. The turnover in our fast food industry now is every other day, so I don't see how any of them gets food training safety. To Senator Hansen's questions on the uneducated, non-caring entrepreneurs who want to produce a well-developed product for their people. This young lady who testified when I came in, she wants to make sure this food is as safe as possible. These are her customers. These are her friends, people who are expanding her business. It's not the same as and not to bash the restaurant industry, but uncaring people who are there for a job. These are people who have a dream, and they are building this dream. And here we have a bureaucracy that is attacking them, who don't think they are educated enough, are trained enough, yet they have to go through national food accreditation. So I just see this opposition as, I appreciate it. Food safety is very important. But I feel that this cottage industry knows food safety almost more than anybody. And to Senator Brewer's part, we need local food processing. We need to be able to feed.
Sir, I'm having difficulty seeing
Okay.
the neutrality of your.
I certainly understand that, and neutrality is a very fine line. And so the bill itself, I'm neutral in. And so that, I guess, would be the neutrality, and that is always a fine line, is neutrality. But it's also a public comment period. And so with this bill, I greatly appreciate the health department coming in and wanting to have us have food safety. I feel that the kitchens are inspected. The people are trained. And so I guess that is my neutral position in that, I appreciate both sides. And so as long as I guess I have a green light, then I can continue to make comment on, we need to promote entrepreneurship in local food in the state of Nebraska. And so I guess I would appreciate the senators to really look at this bill, make amendments that will work with everybody. And I guess I can't encourage you to move the bill along because I'm in a neutral position. But I would appreciate you looking at this situation and bringing both sides together. That's a neutral statement. So I thank you for your time and would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks for your neutral testimony. Any questions, Senator Brewer?
All right, Bill.
Yes, Senator.
First off, thanks for coming in. Because
Certainly.
as you can see, we have plenty of testifiers who are paid to come and testify. The idea of the second house is bringing in folks that actually live it and understand it and want to share information, and no one's paying them to do it. It's just from the heart. So that's what you're doing. Thank you for that.
I appreciate that very much, Senator.
I think sometimes we don't give out enough Darwin Awards because people will be idiots and work hard at it, really, really hard. I mean, if you get sushi from a gas station, you probably need to be sick because something's wrong
Sure.
with you if you're not
You bet.
bright enough to figure that out. Well, unfortunately, in our world, we blame someone when things don't go perfect. And this is kind of circling back to the whole issue here that if we were to figure out a way to inspect at a level where everyone has peace of mind, and we're living in this perfect world, government would be so big, we couldn't afford to do the things that we should be able to live a good life with. And so, you know, we're going to have to sort that out with the bill and what that verbiage looks like. But I wanted to, I guess, share with you that the fact that you're willing to come in and testify and that you just do it from a common person attitude is refreshing. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do take the second house as a citizen very seriously. And I have been on the ground living this stuff for a long time. So,
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
thank you, senators.
Is there additional neutral on LB 321? Welcome, soon to be confirmed, Director of the Agriculture.
Good morning, Senator Halloran and members of the committee. And yes, my name is Sherry Vinton, SHERRYVINTON, and hopefully I will be soon confirmed Director of Nebraska Department of Agriculture. LB 321 amends the Nebraska Pure Food Act to augment the types of food which may be sold under the cottage food provisions. And I am here to testify in a neutral capacity. I didn't say that. While we are firmly committed to food safety, we also understand the benefit of encouraging home-based businesses, which can help local economies. The bill, as amended, clarifies that the cottage food exemption only applies to food that is prepared in a private home. The bill also clarifies that some hazardous foods the public may believe can be sold without a permit, such as sprouts, infused oils and honey, fermented products, and some canned foods do in fact need a permit to be sold. The department already spends a significant amount of time answering questions regarding which food may be sold, under what circumstances the food may be sold without obtaining a food establishment permit. The department has never received any funding for implementing the cottage food provisions, and there are already over 1,000 registered cottage food operations in the state. Broadening the types of food sold will increase the questions and complaints received by the department. With the changes in LB 321, the department would need to hire a program specialist to effectively administer the program and provide timely responses to public inquiries and complaints. The position would also manage existing administrative duties related to all the cottage food registrations and requirements. With that, I'd like to thank Senator Brandt for his willingness to work with us, and I'd be happy to any questions you might have.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony this morning. Any questions, Senator Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first off, thank you for being here and thanks for coming in a neutral position. When I brought the small town meat locker bill, the Secretary of Agriculture came in opposition to it. And I struggled with it because I was saying, listen, I want to help figure out a way to keep it viable for small towns to have meat lockers. And my plan may not be the best plan, but I need help to figure out what right looks like. And he wouldn't help me and then put such a huge A bill on it that it was unrealistic, and then came and spoke in opposition to it. And I just thought, I'm trying to help. I want to find a solution here. You, on the other hand, are saying, hey, we're gonna figure out how to do this, and we'll figure out what right looks like, and I'm gonna come in here and neutral. So thank you for trying to be that person to help us find a solution. And I think the governor made a great choice.
Thank you, Senator Burr. I
Thank you,
didn't
Senator
hear a
Burr.
question.
Any further questions?
No, that's my question.
That was your question, Senator Hughes.
Good morning. As far as your staffing for agents that go out and do inspection, are you guys fully staffed now? I think there was mention that a central area was unstaffed for, I don't know, months and months. Or maybe, do you have that information?
I do believe I have an answer for you, and if it's not correct, I hope someone will correct me. But currently, right now, the cottage food industry isn't inspected. But the inspectors they were referring to are food sanitarians, and that's a different program. And we have had issues with staffing there, and we'll be speaking to that on the next bill.
And I guess my point to that is if we would add this to it, oh my gosh, the amount needed.
Currently, right now, when I spoke to the focus area administrator on this, this has been absorbed. As you've heard, in the last 3 years, this program has exploded, and there are currently 1,000 registered cottage food industries. But we have absorbed, the department has absorbed the increased workflow and questioning due to that. But they say it takes about half of one person's time to do this, but we've managed. We would anticipate increased usage if this were to pass. And so we are to the point now, after the last 3 years, with 1,000 people in the program already to properly administer it. It would require a full-time position at this point if you're going to add more workload. And that's why we put 1 FTE in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Any further questions from the committee? Senator Rabel.
Yes, thank you, Director Vinton. We're glad you're here. And I guess I would like to get a little bit of clarification on the inspections required of the cottage industry. So I heard you say that they're not required to be inspected by anyone at all?
As far as I'm aware, their kitchens are not inspected. So no, their kitchens aren't inspected. Hence the cottage food industry. They are required to take a food safety class. That is part of the original bill. That requirement would still remain. We have no dedicated staff at NDA to oversee this project currently. Like I said, it has been absorbed. And that is the answer.
Then is it customary to leave it to the local public health department to take on those inspections? Because I know that they do it for restaurants and grocery stores, the local.
Commercial kitchens. But I think that's the point, is this program doesn't require that. It's cottage-based food in-home.
Okay.
Labeling is required, but a kitchen inspection is not required.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Rabel. Any additional questions, Senator Hansen?
I think you bring up a good point about inspections. I think with a budding industry such as this, and we're something new that's in Nebraska, I think is maybe in this aspect, in my personal opinion, that it should be government's responsibility to be reactive instead of proactive, right? Give us a reason to inspect you, right? So far, it doesn't seem like there are a whole lot of reasons to overly inspect people, regulating out or cooking food out of their home, such as this. I'm glad you brought up Sprouts. What was your point with Sprouts? Is there, according to this bill, they cannot have Sprouts, or they can?
They cannot. There were a list of foods that were added. We discovered that there were foods that there are a lot of complaints on nationally.
Well, because I think recently, actually in December, there was a huge issue with alfalfa sprouts that they're still trying to figure out. And actually last year, I think Brussels sprouts is another one that had a big E. coli outbreak, if I remember right. Or Listeria, I can't remember. Listeria is typically more dairy. But I think those are typically some of the more kind of, foods that you might see issues with when it comes to foodborne illnesses. And so I think when I see the bill, I think it addresses a lot of the concerns so far. It looks like Senator Brand has done a good job with this. In your opinion, do you think and I think you kind of addressed it. I just want to make sure I just kind of get that right. With the bill currently, and especially with the amendments, do you think they address a lot of the concerns so far you've heard? Like, I know you're coming out neutral, so I don't want to kind of.
From the people I have talked to at the department, there was a concern with sprouts, with infused oils and infused honey, not plain honey, infused honey, with botulism. And those are dangerous situations, and I believe those have been addressed. There are a list of foods. It still requires food safety training.
Okay.
So the requirements are currently as they are, except for a few time and temperature controlled foods.
Excellent. Thank you. And just the record, those sprouts were either served in a restaurant or from a grocery store. So.
I do not know.
I do. I just had to say it. So thanks.
Any additional questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Iba.
This is just maybe you can clarify. So on the fiscal note, it's asking for an ag program specialist. And would you anticipate that we would, knowing the number, the $1,000 or the 1,000 cottage food industry vendors, would you anticipate that we would need to add
More than one?
more than one?
I do not. They have currently handled the workload as they are, spreading it around, and it's been handled up to this point. I'm told it takes about half time.
Okay.
So even if we added more, I think a full-time person could handle it. And I'm presuming that this person could be housed out of the Lincoln office. And so I wouldn't anticipate as much of a problem in hiring as a food inspector outstate Nebraska.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Senator Ibach. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. I don't think it's too presumptuous for me to declare or to address you as Director Vinton before the confirmation. So thank you, Director Vinton, for being.
Thank you, Senator Calvert.
All right, any additional neutral testimony for LB 321? Seeing none, Senator Brandt. Before Senator Brandt comes up, we have written testimony. There were 4 proponents for LB 321 and 1 neutral, and those are in your manual, Senators, committee members. Welcome back, Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Chairman Heller, and I'd like to thank everybody that testified today. It was a great discussion. I'm impressed by the knowledge of the Ag Committee on the subject of food safety. I mean, everybody has a different look on food safety. I'd like to bring up this point. 40% of the population of the state of Nebraska lives in 3 counties. 60% of us live in the other 90 counties, and a lot of these tend to be food deserts. You wouldn't think that in rural Nebraska, probably the 3rd largest ag economy in the nation, there aren't a lot of food options out there. And we may call this cottage food bill for the last 3 years, but growing up, we always had people in the community that made wedding cakes or cupcakes or something like this. The reason this is so popular is we kind of brought it out of the darkness and legalized it. And Senator Hansen remembers this from 3 years ago. This is a very robust discussion. So it's sort of a different perspective when you're in rural Nebraska, maybe versus Lincoln or Omaha, where you have a lot of food choices or grocery stores or bakers or things like that. These cottage food people do a great job. Food safety, they take an online food safety course. The whole point of cottage foods was they didn't have to have a commercial kitchen. I mean, if a commercial kitchen is a very expensive operation, and you're ramping up to be a business that you really never intended to be. We have over 1,000. They're in 83 counties today. This is from Nicole Fox with the Platt Institute. To date, we've had no foodborne illnesses documented from cottage foods for the last 3 years. The testifier, the first testifier that sells in the farmer's market, her sales have quadrupled. She's using it for retirement income. The next testifier on gluten-free items actually created a market for fresh gluten-free items and created a customer base for that. is able to stay home with her children. I think Senator Brewer brought up a very good point on some of these products. How do we know that I, as a customer, didn't leave the mayonnaise out on the counter or the cheesecake on the counter for, too long, and I'm not as tough as he is. My wife, I always say I've got food poisoning from something, and she always gives me crap about how I don't, but what else have we got here? Okay. Director Vinton, thank you for working with us. We spent a quality hour with an attorney and the department, and this is the amendment you have before you. It's a much better bill than how we started. We're willing to work with the opponents. The legislature shouldn't stand in the way of entrepreneurship. A lot of the testimony is based on what ifs. We cannot what if stuff in every committee we all work on, whatever the issue is. I think we've got a track record here. We've got 3 years underneath our belt. All we're asking for is just to expand some of the opportunities out there. And the point of cottage foods is less inspection. I mean, and we've shown that this model has worked for Nebraska, and it's also working in some of our surrounding states. And with that, I would take any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Any questions, Senator Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so the initial idea of the original bill came from just feedback from folks that are involved in the cottage industry.
I think Senator Crawford sponsored the original bill, and Senator Hansen's nodding his head over here. My understanding, when our class came to the legislature, this bill had been defeated several times prior to that. What the track record was, who originally introduced it, I'm unable to answer that, but maybe we can research that and get back to you.
All right, so you dropped the bill, then through communications with the secretary or the director of ag or the department of ag, it was determined that things needed to have some changes, some tweaking.
Sure.
That's what this amendment is.
That's right.
And you're going to look to see if there's anything else that you may have not covered in that.
If there are any legitimate concerns from some of the opponents, and I think the bill, when they read the amendment, we dropped the amendment this morning. We got it from bill drafters this morning. I apologize for that, but that's how this place works. They may not have had an opportunity to review some of those things in the amendment. I'd ask everybody to look at that versus the original bill. But we did insert those concerns based on the attorney from the Department of Agriculture to get things square.
All right, thank you for that understanding. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Senator Rabel?
Senator Brandt, thank you very much. I guess I did have a chance to quickly read through the amendment. And the one concern I have is with the farmer's market to sell these additional expanded food items that have additional safety requirements. I didn't see it talked about refrigeration. That was one of the questions I asked, and I didn't really hear that, how they transport it to the farmer's market, how they store it and keep it refrigerated. I know they referenced some people have a generator in one of their trucks and stuff like that, but at each individual stand, are they doing the appropriate dry icing? The one young mother spoke about how she packs it in dry ice as she transports it to her customers in Lexington and Gothenburg. But I didn't hear that specificity on refrigeration, which these food products, additional expanded food products require. And so when you go back, I think maybe that needs to be enhanced for the cottage food industry, not only in the transport, but in the presentation and storage during the farmers markets, where we know it can be really cold or it can be really hot, and you have to really watch the temperature of the product.
We'll take a look at that, Senator, and get back to you.
Okay.
But some of the farmers markets that I've participated in, we used to sell sweet corn, and they would have some baked goods and stuff like that at some of these. It isn't the producers, it's the customers. I mean, they'll jam that item just in a Walmart bag and throw it in the back of their car, and who knows how long that thing's going to sit there. I think the point was made the cottage food producers want to produce a quality product and give you their very best. And you're going to pay a premium for that. And I think people are foolish if they don't protect that at that step. And if they're going to the farmer's market and they're buying a refrigerated food, they're probably bringing a cooler of some sort to put those foods in. So, I mean, once that exchange is made, it's on the shoulders of the customer.
I think that part is clear.
Okay.
But
We'll take a look and get back to you.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Senator Rabel. Any further questions? All right. Thank you, Senator Brandt. Bringing this to us.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the hearing on LB 321. We will move on with LB 262. LB 262 is becoming a Agriculture Committee bill. It was brought to us request of the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, and it deals with changing provisions of the Nebraska Pure Food Act. And I will ask Rick Leonard, our committee research analyst, to present the bill to the committee. Carry away, Rick.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman Halloran and members of the committee. I'm Rick Leonard, as the Senator mentioned, RICKLEONARD, and I'm the research analyst for the committee. LB 262, as the Senator mentioned, is introduced by the committee at the request of the Department of Agriculture. I will briefly introduce the bill and will be followed by the agency testifiers who will go into further detail regarding the changes in the bill and the purposes for which they're being brought. LB 262 would make a series of revisions to the Nebraska Pure Food Act recommended by the department. Specifically, LB 262 would accomplish the following. It modifies the water requirements for food establishments. The bill would repeal the current state variance from the food code recommendations that is more stringent by requiring establishments to have a permanent water source. The food code recommendation that the bill refers to allows bottled water to be used in some circumstances. Adds an option for food safety course for a food safety course that cottage food operators must complete in order to qualify for registration with the Department of Agriculture. Consolidates, clarifies, simplifies some terminology and food establishment classifications to eliminate unnecessary classification, to provide for better uniformity and clarity in the types of permits issued. Creates a permit exemption for establishments that are already permitted but selling food within another food establishment. Clarifies requirements regarding the locations where permits must be posted. Provides that permits are invalid if, provides for resolution of permits that are chronically late in renewal and payment of the renewal fees. Adopts the food code recommendation regarding minimal qualifications for food safety inspectors. The Nebraska Pure Food Act currently specifies that inspectors must be registered environmental health specialists. LB 262 would allow for use of inspectors as specified for the food code, as specified within the food code. I'm aware that the Department of Agriculture will offer an amendment to that last particular provision of the bill. In the briefing materials I sent prior to the hearing, I included a section-by-section summary. The department will provide a more detailed section-by-section summary with its testimony. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leonard. Any questions, Senator Rabel?
Mr. Leonard, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for summarizing the bill, giving it a very thoughtful interpretation of the changes. I really commend you because this is so helpful in allowing us to really absorb the data quickly and jump right into the hearings and to be able to answer or ask some thoughtful questions. So I really appreciate all the efforts you have put into this because it really assists us in doing our job. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator Rabel. He will now be asking for a raise.
I approve that.
No, my kudos to Mr. Leonard does a great job on analyzing these bills. Any further questions? Seeing none, okay. Thank you, Mr. Leonard. All right, we will start off with proponents of LB 262. Welcome back, Dr. Lynn.
Good morning again. Chairman Halloran and members of the Agriculture Committee. Once again, my name is Sherry Vinton, SHERRYVINTON, and I am the Director of the Nebraska Department of Agriculture. I'm here today to testify in support of LB 262 and would like to thank the Agriculture Committee for introducing this bill regarding the Nebraska Pure Food Act. LB 262 amends the Nebraska Pure Food Act to streamline operations of the department and aligns provisions with the FDA Food Code. Currently, the Nebraska Pure Food Act is more stringent than the FDA Food Code regarding the credentialing of food inspectors. The Nebraska Pure Food Act authorizes the department to perform inspections or to enter into agreements with local health departments to perform the inspections. Currently, the department contracts with Douglas County, Lincoln-Lancaster County, and the Central District Health Department to perform inspections under the Act. LB 262 would continue to allow for registered environmental health specialists or REHS credentialing, but would no longer mandate it. Not only does the FDA not mandate REHS credentials, most other area states do not require the specific credentialing for food inspectors. 60% of the training to obtain REHS credentialing does not pertain to the department's food inspectors' day-to-day work. Examples of areas covered by the REHS exam which do not apply to our food inspections include inspections of wastewater, hazardous waste facilities, inspections of swimming pools, body art providers and group homes, and lead and epidemiology investigations, as well as developing environmental public health emergency response plans. Our inspectors must spend significant time studying for the REHS exam in topic areas they don't use in their work, and this takes away from their performing food inspections. The change to allow other credentialing rather than REHS does not limit the training and the credentials the local health departments can require of their own employees. The changes in LB 262 will help the department carry out its mission to protect food safety in the state. We know everyone has had staffing issues, but when the department cannot hire food inspectors, food inspections do not get done, and the lack of regular inspections is an obvious threat to food safety. As the statute is currently worded, a newly hired food inspector must walk in the door with a bachelor's degree and 30 hours of science. The department is statutorily not allowed to hire based on work experience. The inspector for the Area 2 position, which is North Platte and North, was vacant for 24 out of the last 36 months because we couldn't find and keep qualified candidates. Other inspectors had to travel to fill in, which took considerable time away from completing their own inspections. We've heard concerns from our industry partners that this change could be perceived as weakening our food inspection program. To address these concerns, we are asking for an amendment to clarify the department would utilize a certified professional food safety credential examination. The department plans to require food inspectors to obtain credentialing under the National Environmental Health Association, which allows experience to replace some of the education required by REHS. The amendment would require that food inspectors obtaining this credential pass the exam within 36 months of being hired. A copy of the requested amendment is included with the materials I submitted. In our written testimony, you will find that the training that would continue to be required for food inspectors, information regarding REHS requirements, as well as the requirements for the credentialing specified in the amendment. Additionally, LB 262 would align Nebraska requirements with the FDA Food Code by allowing food establishments to obtain water in ways other than permanent water sources, as is currently required by the statute. The FDA Food Code specifically allows water to come from water containers. Mobile food establishments rely on the ability to use water from this type of non-permanent source. The bill would also allow permitted food establishments to sell food inside other food establishments without obtaining a new permit for each location. An example of this is when a restaurant sells food at a grocery store, but the grocery store never takes ownership of the food being sold by the restaurant. The restaurant would not need to have a separate permit for each of the grocery stores where it chooses to locate its food for individual purpose. Finally, the bill modifies language relating to the cottage food businesses so that a course offered by UNL can clearly be used to meet the food safety course requirement for these businesses. The bill also clears up definitions to streamline the permitting process. Detailed descriptions of the consolidation and clarification of permit types are also included in the written testimony. Food safety is always the priority under the Pure Food Act, and we will continue to carry out quality inspections while maintaining fiscal responsibility. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Vinton. Any questions from the committee? Must have been pretty thorough. Oh, Senator Agba.
If you need a question, I'll ask one.
I don't.
This is really helpful. There's currently no fee for any licensing or exams that would be required.
Oh, there is a fee, the REHS exam, and I just looked this up yesterday because I keep needing to look up registered environmental health specialist. And it's a 4-letter acronym, not the 3-letter ones we talked about before. But the current fee was $420 if you're a member and like $600 and some dollars if you're not a member. Plus you can get training materials for like another $150. And I'm told many people have to take this exam more than once. Most people don't pass it on the first time. So yes, there is a fee, and I don't believe the department covers that, but I can't tell you that.
I have an inspector in my district that has had some lengthy conversation with me over some of the lack of number of inspectors, but also some of these issues. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Agba. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much. Are there additional proponents for LB 262? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone in opposition to LB 262? Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name and spell your name for us.
My name is Colton Wolinski, COLTON, Good morning, Senator Halloran and members of the Agriculture Committee. My name is Colton Wolinski. I'm a registered environmental health specialist in Nebraska, and I conduct food inspections. Registered environmental health specialists are the unseen force protecting Nebraskans from contaminated food, water, and air. Inspectors who maintain their REHS in Nebraska work hard every day to protect Nebraskans. Nebraskans' health by inspecting, educating, and enforcing Nebraska's environmental health laws. There are currently about 50 regulatory food inspectors throughout our state, ensuring the food you and your family eat is safe. We inspect every grocery store, restaurant, gas station, bar, and school across the state. We are at the State Fair, the College World Series, Taste of Omaha, farmers markets. We work days and nights, we work weekends, we work tirelessly to ensure food safety in Nebraska. We do this because we care about our communities and we want to prevent foodborne illnesses. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Nebraska Environmental Health Association, better known as NEHA. NEHA represents environmental public health professionals across the state and provides avenues for registered environmental health specialists to obtain a continuing education. The REHS certification requires one to hold a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university and complete at least 45 credit hours or 30 semester hours of academic work in the basic natural sciences and pass an examination to obtain an REHS certification. And this is through the National Environmental Health Association. This certification requires 24 hours of continuing education to be completed every 2 years. I'm here today because one of the proposed changes to the Nebraska Pure Food Act in LB 262 would no longer require a food safety inspector to obtain an REH certification for inspecting food establishments. The proposed change references section 8-402.10 of the FDA Food Code, which states that a person conducting food inspections shall have the knowledge, skills, and ability to adequately perform the required duties. The proposed change is extremely vague, allowing for a wide range of interpretation from agencies to determine what knowledge, skills, and ability would be required for inspectors to adequately perform food inspections. If this bill is passed without these changes to this section, a food inspector would not need a college degree, any assigned training on food safety, continuing education, certification, or testing. Nebraska's licensure of the profession of environmental health exists to ensure that those are entrusted to protect the health of Nebraskans are properly educated, qualified, and trained. The proposed change would eliminate the requirement of an REHS certification to conduct food inspections. This would be a big step backwards for Nebraskans and for food safety. NEHA respectfully asks the Agriculture Committee to amend this bill and keep the requirement for food inspections to be conducted by an REHS. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? A lot to digest here in a short period of time.
Yes.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Next opponent for LB 262. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, thank you. Senator Halloran, members of the Agricultural Committee, thank you for allowing me this time to speak. My name is Jeremy Collinson, JEREMY COLLINSON. I am the Environmental Health Manager with the Central District Health Department, Grand Island. I also oversee the food inspection program at the Central District Health Department. I am also a member of the Nebraska Board of Registered Environmental Health Specialists. I am here today speaking on behalf of the Board of Registered Environmental Health Specialists. The REHS Board opposes LB 262 based on the reduction of educational standards required for food inspectors conducting food inspections. The proposed changes do not set a minimum educational standard nor provide for continuing education requirements. As a member of the state REHS Board, we are tasked with 3 objectives. We ensure that candidates applying to take the test or to be certified are educated, they have that they continue with continuing education. And we also are the governing authority that oversees that REHS certificate. As far as the proper background, a bachelor's degree that includes 30 semester hours of college credit, basic science work from accredited colleges required to obtain the RGS certificate. Without the requirement of the REHS, food inspectors may not have that knowledge needed to perform the duties of a Nebraska food inspector. Many times during the food inspection, an inspector will come across something that isn't covered as far as food goes. It may be something associated with water, it may be wastewater. It may be an issue regarding chemistry. Do we need to make our sanitizers stronger, lesser? So there are many things that college education can help with the food inspector. One of the things in Grand Island with our inspectors, they teach a food safety course. If somebody hasn't been involved in a lot of food safety issues, these inspectors can go out, they can put a class together, they can teach a class, teach it to one restaurant, they can teach it to a group of people. In our case, we teach food safety courses at the state fair. It takes a little bit of time to set that up. You need to know what you're talking about and have confidence in speaking to a group of people to be able to that. And without that college education, you would be lacking that. Food inspectors are not just conducting inspections to find violations. A big portion of any food inspection is the education opportunity associated with the inspection. Yeah, granted, we go out, we check temperatures, we look for violations, we write them up. But in most cases, the inspection takes just as long to sit down with those people and go over the violations and tell them why it's wrong. What do they need to do? And then how do they fix that? And what are the implications to foodborne illness risk factors? During a food inspection, there are so many things that occur. Sometimes we are dealing with pests. We may have to sit down and implement a pest integration system with the establishment. The business of food is a fast-growing industry. Without continuing education requirements that is being proposed, inspectors will not be able to thoroughly consult, educate, and inspect facilities. Currently, food inspectors are required to have 24 hours of continuing education every 2 years. This helps them keep up with changes. This is just enough to keep up with the changes. This is also going to reduce the requirements food inspectors that will be able to look over something. As of right now, if you have an REHS certificate, the REH board oversees and makes sure everyone has a proper continuing education. By requiring the REHS for food inspectors, you are ensuring that there is a regulatory authority overseeing the profession. We hate to say it, but there are times when people do the wrong thing. The REH board is there to protect the public. We are able to take complaints. We are able to take action on a specific person if something had happened. We can suspend, we can fine, we can revoke licenses. There are currently 54 environmental health specialists in the state, 10 provisional, meaning in training. We are small, but we are mighty. Moving forward, we know that the Department of Agriculture is the lead agency for food inspections. We tend to follow that, but as we move forward, if the local health departments are the only one that have the REHS requirements, then are we the authority? Thank you, and can I answer any questions?
Okay, thanks for your testimony. Any questions, Senator Hughes?
This is a little bit of a clarification. What I'm reading is our Department of Ag is saying that right now Nebraska is more stringent than what the FDA code is. Is that so? We are requiring this type of degree, but the FDA does not. Correct. And so, I mean, I kind of fall under. We had some stuff in General Affairs yesterday that our law was a little different than federal law. I mean, that's the overall one. So I think we should always follow that. So do you think as a nation, we're not being very safe, other states then, if they're not?
I can speak on the behalf here in Nebraska. We are up here. The REHS is a very high credential. And the way it is proposed now, it is going way down the pole. There's no college education. There's very little educational requirements to be able to be a food inspector now. There may be a little bit of time experience, but time experience working at a fast food place may or may not be what we want when it comes to a food inspector. So the REHS is the top. Nebraska does recognize that.
And I mean, this issue is getting pushed because we don't have people, right? We don't have workers across the board in any industry. And I think the person right before you, what's your suggestion then on getting, because I'd rather have a food inspector than none.
Right. So
then it's really unsafe.
And it was even mentioned earlier regarding the difficulty hiring food service workers right now. So we have people even getting in the service that are less experienced than they were 3 or 4 years ago. That is where the food inspector comes into play. They are there to help educate, to help, to get these people started, to make them, be aware of what's the right thing to do. The 3 health departments that were mentioned that are contracted with the state to do food inspections, I do know that our salary is higher than the state's. We haven't had once in a while we'll have problems getting somebody hired, but we really don't go too long. So our fees, are they higher? Do we generate more money? Probably. But we are able to, at the local level, hire that staff that meets requirements.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Is that a yes, Senator Burrow?
Yes.
Okay, Senator Burrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, now, you're in the Grand Island office.
Yes.
How many work in this office?
What's that?
How many work in this office?
As far as food inspectors go, we have 2 that are food inspectors. In Grand Island, we're a little bit a general. We do more than just food. But I would say our 2 workers spend 70-80% of their week on food service inspections.
And how many of these food safety classes do they teach a year?
3. Probably each one.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? I've got a quick question or two. So you have the authority to suspend or revoke?
It can go through the board based on, some instances could be, have they been, I don't know. We've had them in the past, I guess, where they have been fraudulent.
Food
Either
establishment.
taking money or bribes. I wasn't part of the board, so I don't know. This is kind of going through hearsay.
So without naming names, have you revoked?
Since I've been on the board, we have not revoked any licenses of food inspectors.
No, I'm not talking about the inspectors. I'm talking about the places you inspect.
Oh, do we inspect? Yes, we do.
Okay, I don't need to have names.
Yeah.
Protect the guilty here. But I'm just curious, on an annual basis, over the last 1 or 2 years, let's say, how many suspensions or revocations of food establishments have you done?
In Grand Island, I would say a half a dozen a year, maybe.
Okay.
6 to 10 a year, roughly.
Are there any currently still open food establishments that you would not go eating at?
I don't eat out a lot.
Good answer.
Well, okay. Are there any food establishments in the area that you would not recommend friends to go to?
If people ask me if I eat there, I will tell them yes or no. If friends ask me, yes. And our information is open to the public. Anybody is more than welcome to get our inspection forms. They can look at what has been found. A lot of times the places that we pull their licenses from them, that you were talking about, we may give them 2 days. Say, here's your 2 days. Go fix the remedy. Go remedy the situation. We'll come back in 2 days. If the problem is corrected, you can open back up. And a lot of it depends on what the problem was.
Sure. Yeah, so it's kind of a leading question, and it wasn't trying to set you up, but if there are places that you would not recommend your friends to eat out, since you don't eat out very often, if there are those kind of places, why haven't they been closed down?
It could be taste, could be flavor.
Let me rephrase that. Based upon your knowledge about the way the places are operated, not on the taste of the food or the type of.
I have ate at some places I would not recommend my friends, but there's just those places that that aren't going to suit that person's.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just trying to find
I know there are better places. There's places out there that get A's. There's places out there that get C's. If you were to grade them, we do not grade them, but there are some places that do better than others.
How does what you do compare with, I think the name of is Serve Safe?
As far as the classes we do,
right?
We actually partner with the Nebraska. State of Nebraska on teaching Serve Safe courses through the Extension Agency.
Okay, it's a very good program.
Yeah, yes.
All right, any additional questions? I dominated that too much. Not seeing none. Thanks for your testimony. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Ag Committee. Please.
Yeah, thank you.
Say and spell your last.
Yep. Good morning, Chairman Halloran, and members of the Agricultural Committee. My name is Jeremy Eshelman, JEREMYESCHLIMAN. And I'm Proud to say that Senator Halloran and Senator Ivack's districts are within my purvey for my constituency, I guess. I serve the constituents in Buffalo, Dawson, Franklin, Gosper, Harlan, Kearney, and Phelps counties, almost 100,000 people. I'm here today on behalf of Friends of Public Health in Nebraska to testify in opposition to LB 262. Before I get there, I want to address just a few questions that came up in the last round. So under Jeremy Collinson. So first, Senator Hughes, I know she stepped away for just a second. She had asked about the bandwidth of inspectors. Quite honestly, I think there's an opportunity, and this would be a further discussion outside this conversation, but as been mentioned, there's several local health departments that currently contract with the department. I think that's an untapped resource in a lot of ways. So I'll just put that out there. And also, Senator Halloran, regarding your question, where would you go to eat? I used to be a food inspector, and my response would be similar with a little bit different flavor, and no pun intended, that anytime you go out to eat, there's risk. And it's just like if you go to have surgery. Do you want a surgeon that has an A or a C? They're called the same thing. They're surgeons, right? But there's risk with that, from an operator standpoint. So, but I digress. So LB 262, as presented, effectively diminishes the standard for food inspectors, decreases essential technical assistance to food establishments, and increases foodborne illness risk, especially in rural Nebraska. Local health departments are responsible for disease investigation in their respective districts, while only a few, as we have discussed, are contracted with the department to conduct food establishment inspections. All local health departments conduct foodborne illness investigations, as you previously heard in another hearing. The state of Nebraska currently holds individuals who conduct retail food establishment inspections to a standard of either a registered environmental specialist or provisional environmental specialist credential. Individuals holding this REHS credential show competency in a broad range of environmental issues, as already been mentioned, such as vector control, water quality, wastewater treatment, hazardous materials, air quality, built environment, and food safety. Registered environmental specialists commonly respond to routine or emergency environmental health situations and provide education to their communities. While in the amendment that's being proposed, the certified professional food safety credential is often suggested for industry professionals, is not equivalent to the REHS. A key differentiation between the REHS credential and the certified professional food safety credential is in educational attainment. The certified professional food safety credential can be obtained with a minimum educational attainment of high school diploma and progressive experience in food-related work. According to the brochure, the CPFS candidate brochure, only 8% of exam content is devoted to responding to emergencies. As a previous food inspector myself, I can personally attest the need for well-rounded education in natural sciences. As food inspectors commonly respond to calls for truck wrecks involving food, floods, fires, electrical outages, things of that nature, or just generally wholly unsanitary situations. Often working independently in communities, especially in rural communities. And as often as we think that people are connected via technology, there are places in Nebraska, believe it or not, that you can't get connection with the cell phone. And there may be your local favorite pub or bar, things like that there. So many concerns beyond how to prepare food safely can arise, such as water source safety, wastewater treatment, vector control, etc. One of the underlying areas of concern presented by the department in presenting the change to lower the standard for food establishment inspectors is the inability to attract and maintain staffing across Nebraska to provide sufficient food establishment inspections and maintain overall food safety, as you've already heard. I can personally attest to the challenges of hiring individuals in this area, as I recently hired someone at my local health department in Kearney, Nebraska. In my experience, when the employment market moves, employer makes two choices. You have two choices. One, you move with the market, increase wages, increase benefits of that nature, or you don't, and you lose talent, and you struggle to fill the positions. I really think in my personal opinion, the latter is the case here, is that, and as an example, the starting wage at my department, Two Rivers Public Health Department, is about $5 to $6 higher than the Department of Agriculture. So, and we had no challenges filling the position. To provide an example in a different context, if you're building a bridge and you can't hire an engineer to provide the design specifications, but instead you hire a road maintenance professional, the bridge will likely get built. It might look great. You hope it looks great, but you may not realize the risk of improper engineering and the safety risk in particular until it's too late. By diminishing the standard for food inspectors in Nebraska, the risk of foodborne illness increases. In summary, As LB 262 is presented, effectively diminishes the standard of food inspectors, decreases essential technical assistance to food establishments, and increases foodborne illness risk, especially in rural Nebraska. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. Let's see, where do we begin here? So how many of these emergencies in your office have you had this last year that you had to react to?
So to be clear, Senator Brewer, at Two Rivers Public Health Department, we don't contract with the department. So I'm basing this on my previous experience. So I'm going to go back a few years ago. I was a food inspector for about 10 years ago. So I would say the calls during that time frame were sporadic, maybe 6 to half a dozen to a dozen across a year.
Okay, understand where I come from here. So we have the Nebraska Environmental Health Association. We have the Nebraska Board of Registered Environmental Health Specialists. We have the Friends of Public Health in Nebraska, which we appreciate having all the friends. But where I'm worried is you use this analogy of do you want an A doctor or C doctor? My concern is that you guys aren't all here because it's kind of a self-licking ice cream cone thing where this thing moves to where the Department of Ag wants it, and now all of a sudden you guys aren't really a priority as much as you are now. Is that kind of how you see it?
I hear what you're saying. As I'm not currently a food inspector, it doesn't directly impact me as much. But I also, to be clear, I am a registered environmental specialist. I maintain that because I see the value in maintaining that over time. As a health director now at Two Rivers, there's often situations where we're exposed to a wide variety of things, obviously. Now, in this specific situation, I hear what you're saying as far as being a self-fulfilled prophecy of some type, protecting that turf in a lot of ways. I don't see it that way personally. I see it as a situation where there's people out there. The wages in this particular situation, I think, are too low for this position. Rather than diluting their credential, I think the wage needs to float up to the current value where it should be.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Senator Hansen?
It's more of a statistical question. What other states follow just the FDA code, like what this is trying to do? Do you know how many other states do that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Senator Hansen. So in my experience, I've had previous interactions with, as I was a food inspector, I was on what the department had as a retail board, industry, and regulatory officials. The model food code as presented by the feds is just that. It's an example that each state can kind of tweak a little bit, adopt as they see fit. In my experience, and it's going back a little bit in time, that every state, they make small changes to it, or may make major changes to it. So the model food code as presented changes. And I'm going to go one step further, and I think maybe this is what you're going down this pathway, but I don't want to presume that regarding the criteria for food inspections, it does vary from state to state. And to be fair, you go to the East Coast, go to New Jersey, it's one that pops up. I think when I did a quick search, it's required to be a registered environmental specialist. You go to Wyoming, maybe not so much. It's kind of across the board, I guess.
Okay, and I think you were kind of hitting on it a little bit there. It's more of a comparative analysis, I think, right? Is to find out, okay, those states who have kind of fought a little more closer to just the FDA code, kind of similar to what we're doing. I know they're not all the same. And those who have gone to a higher standard, what's the rate of foodborne illness, or other kinds of illnesses in the state comparatively, I think, right? Because if we're seeing a lot of ones that are kind of following more what we're trying to do, and like, hey, there's not really a whole lot. They're just the same as all the other ones, right? I think that might be a positive argument for what was trying to get accomplished here. I just don't know that for sure. I just don't know if you know off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head, no, but I can sure do some research and get back to you.
You seem like a really smart guy, so
I appreciate that, but I'll take it as a compliment.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. He's never said that about me. Any further questions, Senator Abbott?
I just have one. So I'm looking at the difference in qualifications and the credentials, and assuming that and knowing that the change to the lower standard of food establishment inspectors, How many of each do you have in your office? Do you have both the credentialed and the food safety credentialed or the lesser credentialed people in your office?
Well, hello, Senator. I'm back in. We haven't met in person. I talked to your staff. Thank you very much. To answer your question directly, we have an in-process environmental specialist. She's been on the job for 3 months. Her background is in microbiology, molecular biology specialty. So as we aren't contracted with the Department of Ag to food inspections, we don't have that exact connection like you may have heard from Central District or Lincoln, Lancaster, Douglas County per se. But as an example, if we went down this pathway as a health department, or we'd likely encourage our staff to have actually both, quite honestly. There's a value in seeing that. I haven't personally taken the test for the certified food professional. I have taught ServSafe classes. Also, it's a great class. I think this new credential that's been promoted by the national organization, I think it's a good one. It has a fit. In my personal opinion, I don't think it should replace RHS.
Okay. You are a really smart person. I agree with Senator Hansen. Thank you.
Okay.
It's very thoughtful.
Thank you for the compliment.
All right. Thank you, senators, for your questions. Just a quick aside here. Do you know what they call the individual who is the lowest graduating score in medical school?
A doctor.
Doctor. Just to humble us all a little bit. Sometimes just passing something isn't necessarily mean we're all good at it. I can attest to that. So, any further questions? Quick question. Have you had a chance to read the amendment?
I have seen it, yes. And I also want to commend Mr. Leonard. I talked to him the other day on the phone, very cordial, very knowledgeable. I can tell from just a quick conversation how much research he's done. So thank you.
Oh, it's Mr. Leonard, David.
Yes.
No, it's well justified. So, does the amendment mitigate any of your concerns? Some of your concerns?
I don't feel it does. No, and that's, as I looked at that, I appreciate the movement from the department to discuss it, and we'd be willing to discuss more. I don't want to say this is an issue that can't be resolved. Often public health, we always want to work with agencies to do that.
So everybody else has probably caught this and it went right past me, but I'm a little curious. It's not clear to me who hires you all.
Hires food inspectors or?
Well, who hires REHS?
So it tends to be establishments that are regulatory in nature. So it could be the Department of Agriculture, it could be the Department of Energy and Environment, it could be FDA, it could be local health departments.
Okay, all right, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none, I thank you for your testimony. Any additional opposition for LB 262? Okay, seeing none. Anyone in the neutral for LB 262? Oh, okay. Good morning again.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ansley Fellers, ANSLEY-FELLERS, and I'm here on behalf of the Nebraska Grocery Industry Association, testifying very quickly in a neutral capacity on LB 262. Very quickly, I'd like to thank the Department of Ag for working with our industry to establish parameters for one permit holder selling product within another permit holder's location. The department has assured us if this bill passes, and we'd like the record to reflect, they will work with us to clarify via some sort of guidance document how exactly inspectors are to handle a violation. Additionally, I think the conversation about making it easier to find and hire inspectors is an important one. I can't testify in total support of the amendment from the department to provide some flexibility in hiring inspectors. We just got the final language back, but I sense folks in my industry are open to common sense changes that provide for enough trained inspectors to help with business compliance and consumer confidence. It's important to note for this committee and new members of the legislature that our state Department of Agriculture has been great from our perspective about focusing on industry compliance, not just enforcement. It's refreshing when a regulatory body is willing to give folks the benefit of the doubt and work to ensure compliance. We are confident that under the new OMOS director, this will continue. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
One real quick question.
One real quick question.
Yes.
Senator Hansen.
So in the industry that you represent, have they ever had to trying to think of, we're not slow business down, but alter their business because of a lack of inspectors. Like, so we don't have an inspector here, so I can't move forward with something. I'm trying to figure out like the necessity for a lot. You know, if that's the case, then yeah, we need more inspectors because I don't want to hold up a private business because the government can't do the job.
I can tell you, not necessarily in the grocery industry since I joined the association. So in the last 2 years, I have not got that complaint. I have heard it from other industries.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hansen. Thank you. Any further questions? Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any additional neutral testimony? Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Halloran, members of the committee. My name is Zoe Olson, Zoe-Olson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska Hospitality Association. And we have moved from opposing to neutral on this after working with the Department of Ag last week, and I'm going to call her Director Vin also. We were concerned that about not having any certification, and we worked that out. While we know this is not the perfect solution for everybody, we believe in compromise. I don't believe there's been an industry that's been hit any harder than ours was on being able to find people, and we recognize that's an issue. So we are neutral.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any further neutral testimony? Seeing none, that will conclude January 31st Agriculture Committee's hearings for the morning. Thank you for being. Was there, oops, for the record. We're still on, transcribers? Okay, for the record, we had one opponent, one neutral, and one proponent for LB 262.